Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a little more blood-soaked than our usual bedtime snack. Not a cowboy shootout, not a Roman bath orgy. No, tonight we're headed into the obsidian heart of Mesoamerica. You might think you're tough enough to be a Jaguar Warrior, one of the Aztecs' most elite and feared fighters, but you're about to find out why you'd probably faint halfway through your first ritual bloodletting. And trust me, there will be blood, gallons of it. If you're enjoying these sleepy dives into the past, a like or subscribe helps more than you know. I'd also love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment with your city and what time it is there. It's always wild to see people falling asleep to stories from across the globe. Now dim the lights. Let the gentle hum of your fan carry you into the heart of ancient Tenochtitlan, and try to keep your head, figuratively and literally. You're 14 years old, naked except for a loincloth. Your ribs poke through your brown skin like the bones of a smoked fish. The sun is already blistering overhead, and you can smell the sweet rot of mango peels and blood from the training yard. Your father, a former Jaguar warrior himself, has just handed you a club studded with volcanic glass and told you not to die. Easy enough, right? The obsidian blade is sharp enough to flay a frog mid-jump, but also brittle. It shatters on bone, and you'll be cleaning shards out of your leg for weeks if you're not careful. Not that anyone cares. Jaguar warriors don't get days off for splinters. You square off against another boy. He's got a scar running from his jaw to his collarbone, the souvenir of a mock duel last week. The trainer, a man whose face has seen more bone breaks than the calendar has days, growls something about honour and death. You're already dizzy. Maybe it's the hunger, or maybe it's fear. Either way, you lunge. The club connects with your opponent's thigh. Not enough to cripple him, but enough to buy a second. He slashes, fast and ugly. Your arm burns, blood, yours, you're learning. Welcome to basic training, Aztec style. You're not a Jaguar warrior yet. That title must be earned, not by passing exams or racking up kills. No, you need to capture enemies, alive, intact, and preferably kicking. Only when you've offered a handful of living sacrifices to the gods can you be called a true Jaguar. And yes, they mean actual human sacrifices. And don't even think about cheating the system by killing in battle. That just makes you a decent soldier. Jaguar warriors don't just fight, they hunt. They don't just win, they feed the gods. Which means you spend a lot of time in enemy territory, darting through jungle trails with nothing but your macuahuitl and a prayer. You learn how to trip a man without slitting his throat, how to disarm without breaking too many fingers. You become a craftsman of capture, a surgeon of suffering, and if you fail, well, let's just say the gods aren't picky. You might find yourself on the wrong side of the obsidian knife. When you finally bring home your first captive, barefoot, bruised and sobbing, you're celebrated. Not with a feast, but with a piercing. A thick spine is jammed through your tongue as a sign of devotion. You taste your own blood before the crowd even starts chanting. And then comes the paint. Thick black lines down your arms, a snarling jaguar pelt draped across your shoulders. You're now a living symbol of death and rebirth, a predator who walks among mortals. Congratulations, you're a Jaguar warrior. Now let's talk about what that means. For starters, you don't sleep much. You're either at war, preparing for war, or dancing in a night-long religious ceremony where sleep is an insult to the gods. Your diet is mostly maize, beans, chilies, and the occasional chunk of roasted dog. Yes, dog. It's ceremonial. Don't complain. You wear sandals that rub your heels raw, carry weapons that double as dental tools, and adorn yourself with jade earrings, feathered headdresses and blood, yours, your enemies, and sometimes both. You don't use a mirror. You use polished obsidian, which means you see yourself the way the gods do, warped and shimmering. And the armour, not steel, it's cotton, thickly quilted and surprisingly durable, but it still smells like wet laundry and old skin after a long march. And that jaguar pelt on your back? It stinks. But no one says anything, not unless they want to fight you, and nobody does. Because now you're part of the warrior elite. You get first dibs on food at festivals. You can take concubines. You're eligible for high office, assuming you don't die on the next raid, which statistically you probably will. You sleep curled on a mat in a smoky house, soot lining your nostrils and the faint heartbeat of the city humming outside. In the distance, drums beat like the slow pulse of a giant. You can smell the burning copal resin from the temple and the fermented corn mash of someone's homebrew beer. You've got scars you don't remember earning and dreams you're afraid to interpret. Because sometimes you dream of being the one on the sacrificial stone, and when you wake up there's a part of you that's relieved, and another part that feels like a coward. Because to die as an offering is the greatest honour of all. And that's the thing, really. You don't fight to survive. You fight to be worthy of dying, gloriously, publicly, for the sun god, for the empire, for the endless churning cycle of life and blood. So no, you wouldn't last a day as an Aztec Jaguar warrior. But if you did, you wouldn't want to go back. Congratulations, you're still alive, barely. Your ribs feel like they've been used as a xylophone by a drunk priest, and your nose whistles every time you breathe. But you survived yesterday's beating, and in the Aztec Empire that counts as progress. No one's called you worthless today, yet. The sky is still black when the conch shell screams across the courtyard like a dying goose. You jolt upright on your mat, heart pounding, mouth dry. Your reed pillow has imprinted strange shapes into your cheek, and the charcoal fire has long since gone out, leaving only a faint smell of smoke and old tortillas. You blink, groan, and reach for your macuahuitl, the wooden club studded with volcanic glass razors. You sleep with it now, not because it's comfortable, but because it's safer that way. If someone tries to rob you in the night, you won't have to fumble for your murder stick in the dark. Jaguar warrior training doesn't wait for daylight, or feelings, or breakfast. You stumble barefoot across the cool stones of the courtyard, trying not to look like your joints are made of cactus thorns. Around you, a dozen other boys are already assembling, some stretching, some yawning, one vomiting discreetly into a clay bowl. He had too much fermented maize beer last night. Rookie mistake. This is the Telposh Kali, the school for young commoners training to become warriors. It roughly translates to House of Youth, which is funny, because nothing here feels young. The walls are old, the training spears are old, the instructors are old, even the air smells ancient, like sweat, chilies, and the faint whiff of regret. Your instructor greets you with his usual level of affection, a smack across the shoulder hard enough to jostle your soul. He's got the voice of a gargling obsidian blender and the patience of a starving eagle. You fight today, he growls. Try not to cry this time. The first fight of the day happens before the sun even kisses the pyramids. You're tossed into the dueling circle with another boy, slightly older, definitely meaner, possibly possessed by a war god. His nickname is Chikome because he once knocked out 7 opponents in a row. You're not sure if that's a true story or just propaganda. Either way, your intestines don't care. They're trying to evacuate. You circle each other. The macuahuitl is heavy in your grip, slick with early morning dew and pure, undiluted fear. He strikes first, fast. The glass teeth whistle through the air. You duck, barely. You feel a lock of your hair fall to the ground, neatly severed. That's fine. Hair grows back, heads don't. You respond with a wide swing, sloppy, desperate, and somehow connect with his thigh. It's a good hit, if slightly cowardly. He stumbles. You capitalise. You charge like an angry turkey. He deflects, bashes your shield into your face, and you taste blood. Your own, unfortunately. The crowd of boys jeers and laughs. You're not sure if they're mocking you or cheering. Could be both. The Aztec sense of humour is a bit enthusiastic, but you survive. You even manage to land one more hit before the instructor calls it off. You lose the match, obviously, but not badly. You only cried a little, and no one saw, probably. And most importantly, you earned breakfast. Breakfast is a warm corn tortilla and a scoop of beans. That's it. If you're lucky, someone adds chili water for spice. If you're really lucky, the cook is in a good mood and slips in a roasted grasshopper. extra protein, crunchy, salty, delicious if you don't think about the legs. You eat sitting on a cold stone with your back against the courtyard wall. The boys around you talk about their favourite warriors, which gods they'd like to die for, and who might secretly be dating the brewer's daughter. You stay quiet, chewing slowly, trying to figure out if your molar is loose or just bruised. Your friend Istli leans over and whispers, "If I die tomorrow, tell everyone I made out with a priest's daughter." You nod. "Did you?" "Number, but tell them anyway." Aztec friendships are built on lies, laughter and shared trauma. After breakfast, it's drills. You spend the next 2 hours sprinting across the training yard while carrying a sack of wet sand. The instructor says it builds stamina. Mostly it builds resentment. You trip once, roll down a hill, land in someone's discarded loincloth, and question your life choices. Then it's crawling through cactus tunnels. Yes, literal cactus tunnels. Someone decided the best way to test your pain tolerance was to force you through a tunnel lined with thorns while shouting motivational phrases like, "The gods laugh at weakness and bleed faster." Your back looks like a badly decorated temple wall by the time you crawl out the other side. You're rewarded with a cold splash of river water and a firm pat on the head, which is actually just your instructor checking for lice. You have lice. Midday comes, and you're allowed a short rest. You sit under a tree, nursing your shredded knees and watching a hummingbird flit between the flowers. In Aztec belief, hummingbirds are sacred. They carry the souls of fallen warriors to the next world. You wonder briefly if your soul is already halfway there. Nearby, older boys practice capture techniques. This is the real goal of a Jaguar warrior, not just to kill, but to take enemies alive. Killing is easy. Any angry idiot can swing a club, but capturing, that takes precision, discipline, grace. You have none of those things yet. Still, you watch, learn. If you're ever going to earn your jaguar pelt, and the honour that comes with it, you'll need to master the art of restraint, which is hard when someone's actively trying to rip your head off. In the afternoon, the priests arrive. They smell like resin, honey and smoke. Their robes shimmer with jade and feathers, and their eyes scan the boys like they're choosing fruit at the market. Occasionally, they whisper to your instructors, point at someone, nod. That boy gets pulled aside. You don't know what they're looking for. Strength, intelligence, spiritual vibes. You hope it's not the lice. Later you hear one of those chosen boys was sent to the Karmakak, the noble school. Not because he's noble, but because the gods marked him for something more. Maybe he'll be a priest, or a scribe, or a sacrificial volunteer. It's an honour either way. That's the twisted beauty of Aztec society. Every path leads to the gods. Some just arrive in more pieces than others. Evening comes and the sky turns golden. Smoke from temple incense curls lazily across the rooftops, mingling with the smell of roasted maize and burnt chilies. You ache everywhere. Your arms, your legs, your pride. Your mother finds you outside the family hut and hands you a small cake made of amaranth and honey. It's sweet, software. It tastes like forgiveness. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. Being the son of a former warrior means expectations hang over you like the scent of dried blood. You're not just trying to survive. You're trying to make your ancestors proud. No pressure. That night you lie on your reed mat staring at the ceiling. Your bones throb, your head spins. Somewhere in the city, drums begin their slow rhythm. Dum, 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 calling the people to evening ritual. You imagine the Great Pyramid lit with fire, the priests lifting their knives, the crowd chanting. You wonder if one day you'll stand there painted black, jaguar pelt across your shoulders, heart pounding not from fear, but pride. You wonder if you'll ever feel ready. But readiness doesn't matter. In the Aztec world, you don't wait to be worthy. You become it. One bruise, one capture, one sleepless night at a time. And as you finally drift into a thin, aching sleep, you dream not of victory, but of feathers. Soft this time, warm, floating above you like a god's breath. You thought your first battle would be glorious. Trumpets, chanting, a dramatic pose on top of a temple pyramid, maybe even a kiss from a pretty girl after the bloodshed. That's how they tell it in the poems. What they don't mention in the poems? The diarrhea. Because this morning, as you squat behind a cactus trying to purge last night's questionable maize stew from your trembling body, it hits you. You might die today. Not heroically, not dramatically, just awkwardly. Face down in the mud with an arrow in your butt. The sun isn't even up yet, but your bones are already aching from 2 days of marching. Your cotton armour smells like a wet dog that rolled in corn beer. Your sandals have worn down to paper, and your back itches in 3 different places you can't reach. And you haven't even reached the battlefield yet. You're part of a raiding party now. That means you and about 80 other barely trained, half-fed young warriors are being herded through the jungle by a couple of grim-faced veterans who haven't smiled since the last solar eclipse. They say you're headed toward a rebellious village allied with Tlaxcala, Tenochtitlan's sworn enemy. You're not told what they did to deserve a raid. Refused tribute, maybe. Offered the wrong kind of flowers at a festival. Called someone's grandmother a frog. Doesn't matter. The gods are always hungry, and someone has to be dinner. You're just here to deliver the appetizer. Aztec warfare isn't like the movies. You're not trying to kill everyone. You're trying to capture them. Alive. Screaming. Ideally without removing too many essential limbs. That's how you earn your Jaguar stripes. Not by stacking corpses, but by dragging your victims back home like angry wedding presents for the gods, which you'll admit is a strange way to measure honour. But hey, you didn't write the rules. You just follow them, and hope they don't kill you. By the time you reach the outskirts of the enemy village, your stomach is growling louder than the battle drums. The trees thin out, the air gets heavier, and the older warriors start smearing black paint under their eyes like grim little raccoons. You try to copy them, but get some in your nose and spend the next 10 minutes sneezing like a sacrificial goat. Then the horn blows. This is it. Your first real fight. And suddenly you realise you've made a horrible mistake. The battle doesn't start with a bang. It starts with screaming, and then sprinting. You charge forward with your comrades, your feet slapping the earth, your club clenched in white-knuckled fists. The enemy emerges from behind barricades, half-painted and wholly furious. Arrows zip past like angry birds. One hits a boy near you in the thigh. He collapses, curses, and is promptly stepped on by 3 others. You keep running, because you have no idea what else to do. You see your first opponent, a wiry man with red paint on his face and teeth filed into points. Charming. He swings. You duck. Sort of. The obsidian blade grazes your ear, which begins to leak blood. Your own scream surprises you. It's high-pitched, undignified, not very Jaguar-like. You retaliate. Your Mesoamerican connects with his shoulder. He grunts, stumbles. You don't hesitate. You slam your shield into his chest. He trips over a rock, and suddenly, there he is. On the ground, stunned, human. This is your moment. Your first capture. You raise your weapon and freeze, because he's crying. He's not some faceless enemy. He's a person who doesn't want to be sacrificed, who maybe just wanted to survive the day like you did. But then someone behind you yells, "Tie him already, idiot!" And so, with shaking hands, you pull the cord from your belt and bind his wrists. Congratulations! You've taken your first prisoner. You're officially on the scoreboard. When it's over, you're filthy, bruised, and missing part of your left sandal. But you're also still breathing, which in Aztec warfare qualifies as a victory. The march back is quiet. Not solemn, not proud. Just tired. The captured warriors walk alongside you, silent and bound, their heads bowed. Some are humming low, mournful songs. Others stare straight ahead, already halfway into the next world. Your captive won't look at you. You're not sure if that makes it better or worse. Back in Tenochtitlan, they treat you like a hero. Sort of. You get a garland of marigolds, a cup of pulque, which tastes like fermented socks, and a new loincloth, black to symbolise your first offering. You're led through the streets as drums beat and children throw petals. You try to look proud, but inside you feel strange. Not guilty exactly, but not clean either. There's something about watching another person's freedom vanish under your grip that changes you. You can't say it out loud. Jaguar warriors don't do feelings, but it sits in your gut like a stone. The next morning your prisoner is taken to the temple. You're expected to attend, not because they want you to feel bad, but because this is your success, your gift to the gods. You stand near the base of the pyramid, trying not to vomit as the priest chants and the drums pound like thunder. Your prisoner is led up the steps, arms stretched wide, eyes defiant. At the top, 4 men pin him to the slab. The executioner raises his flint blade. You look away just before it happens. You still hear it. The sound of ribs cracking, the gasp, the silence, and then the cheer. Because the sun will rise again. Thanks to you. You feel hollow. That night you're invited to a feast. You sit among the older warriors as they pass around maize tamales and jokes about enemy warriors who begged like babies. They laugh. You nod. You pretend to enjoy the taste of roasted squash and honeyed beans. But when you go to bed, you don't dream of victory. You dream of that man's eyes, still, unblinking. And you wonder how many more it will take before you stop seeing them. But you can't stop now. You're climbing the ranks, one captive at a time. Soon you'll earn the right to wear your jaguar helmet, to decorate your armour with feathers, to take concubines, to be invited into elite warrior clubs with names like the Otomi or the Eagle Warriors, men who laugh in the face of death and smell constantly of blood, sweat, and smugness. All of that is within reach. You just need to keep capturing, keep offering, keep swallowing the voice in your head that asks, is this what glory is supposed to feel like? Because whether it is or not, the gods are still hungry, and tomorrow you hunt again. You're famous now. Not the emperor wants to shake your hand famous, but small children run up to you and pretend to be bleeding famous, which in Tenochtitlan is about as good as it gets. It's been 3 days since your first successful raid. 3 days since you watched a priest plunge his flint knife into a man's chest, while the crowd cheered like it was festival day. 3 days since you became an official jaguar in training with the blood-soaked resume to prove it. And let's just say, people have noticed. You're walking through the city market with a basket of maize when a girl your age brushes past you. She looks back, smiles. You trip on a rock and drop your entire basket into a puddle. Smooth. Your neighbourhood isn't fancy. You're still the son of a former warrior and a weaver, which means your home smells like wood smoke, chili stew and wet cloth. But since your victory, people have started treating your family with a little more reverence. Your uncle stopped calling you twig arms. Your cousins now pretend they've always known you'd be special. And your mother? She's upgraded your meal portions. You now get 2 tortillas at breakfast instead of 1.5. Luxury. But prestige comes with a cost. You're expected to act like a jaguar warrior now, which means no more slouching, no more complaining about lice, and definitely no more crying when you stub your toe on the grinding stone. You must now carry yourself with the poise of a jungle cat who's killed men and knows how to dance at rituals without looking like he's being attacked by bees. Easier said than done. You start attending official warrior ceremonies. They're long, very long. You kneel on stone floors while old priests chant for what feels like entire lifetimes. The temples are packed with incense so thick it could choke a bird. Every few minutes someone behind you faints from the heat, only to be carried out, revived, and dragged right back in. You try to stay focused, but your mind drifts. To the girl from the market, the one with the smile that made your knees buckle. You don't even know her name. You just know she smelled faintly of vanilla and roasted cacao, and you're pretty sure she didn't hate you, which for a newly minted jaguar cub is basically love. You try not to think about it. You're supposed to be focused on sacrifice, honour and death. But Aztec culture is more complicated than just blood and gods. There's love too, or at least something dangerously similar. Romance in the Aztec world is a mess of rules, glances and risky decisions. Technically, courtship is a formal affair. Your family arranges it. There are go-betweens, offerings, ceremonial blankets. You don't just walk up and say, "Hey, I like your earrings." That could get you reported. Or worse, married. But you're a warrior now. Warriors get a little more freedom. Not total freedom. The emperor isn't handing out concubines like tamales, but you're now eligible to attend certain rituals and dances where flirtation is, unofficially allowed. They call them flower songs, music, poetry, and symbolic innuendo so thick you could choke on it. You attend your first one in full training armour, black paint on your face, hair oiled and bound into a knot so tight it might pull your thoughts out through your scalp. You sit awkwardly on a reed mat while noble girls in embroidered hippils sing verses about flowers blooming under the moon and two birds sharing a single fruit. You try not to sweat, or stare, or say something stupid. You fail. You finally see her again, the basket girl. This time she's with her friends. She sees you, she walks over, she says, "You look better without the blood on your face." You blink, nod, say something deeply poetic like, "Thanks, you too." Her friends giggle, she smiles again, and just like that you've been emotionally decapitated. Of course, any budding romance comes with logistical nightmares. You don't have your own home. You sleep on a mat next to 3 snoring cousins and a dog that licks your toes in its sleep. Even if you were allowed to sneak off and meet her under the moonlight, your instructor would probably smell the perfume on your collar and make you crawl through a tunnel of nettles as penance. Still you think about her, during training, during meals, even during the moments when you're supposed to be meditating in silence and communing with the war god. Sorry, Huitzilopochtli, you'll have to share. Meanwhile, your status continues to rise. Your instructors start treating you differently. Less like a clumsy rookie, more like a mildly competent weapon with potential. You're given a better training shield, woven with tighter reeds. You're invited to spar with slightly older warriors who only beat you half to death. And you start getting noticed by priests. Not the fun kind either. These ones watch you with cold, calculating eyes. They whisper during rituals and consult their obsidian mirrors after you walk past. You're not sure what they see. Maybe greatness. Maybe lunch. You find out later they're tracking your progress for something called the Flower War, a kind of spiritual battleground where warriors capture each other for ritual sacrifice. It's an honour to be considered. It's also a death sentence with extra ceremony. At home, things are changing too. Your little brother now tries to copy your battle stances. Your mother has started weaving jaguar patterns into her fabrics. And your father? He still doesn't say much, but he nods more. Puts a hand on your shoulder occasionally. That's basically a speech. You feel the weight of it all settling on your back. The eyes, the expectations, the whispered talk of when he gets his second captive. Because in this world, one sacrifice isn't enough. You have to keep proving yourself, again and again, until you either die gloriously, or retire with enough scars and stories to terrify the neighbourhood children. One evening you walk through the market just before sunset. The sky is painted in streaks of orange and violet. The city smells like roasted cacao, fresh tortillas, and dust. Street performers juggle flaming sticks. Merchants shout about smoked fish and obsidian blades. Someone's dancing with a snake. And you're standing still, basket in hand, heart thudding, watching the girl from before disappear into the crowd. She turns once, looks back. You smile. You don't chase her. Not yet. You've got another battle coming. A real one. Not for her, for blood. And if you survive that, maybe, just maybe, you'll have time to see where this story leads. You've made a mistake. A serious one. No, you didn't drop your weapon or insult a nobleman's headdress. You did something far worse in the eyes of the Empire. You got noticed. Again. And not just by your neighbours or that flower vendor with suspiciously perfect eyebrows. You're now on the radar of people who sleep inside temples, wear bones for jewellery, and regularly scrub blood off their altar stones with cactus fibre. That's right. The priests are watching you. To be fair, it's not your fault. You were just following orders, marching when told, swinging your obsidian club when appropriate, capturing an enemy warrior alive again, and dragging him back through the jungle like a sacrificial fruit basket. That's all very standard Jaguar warrior behaviour. The issue is, you're getting too good at it. And in the Aztec world, that kind of efficiency doesn't earn you a raise. It earns you a ceremonial summons. You're woken at dawn by a messenger. Again. The sky is still the colour of old ash. You're still crusted with dried sweat and last night's beans. Your mat is sticking to your back. None of that matters. The priesthood has called for you. You're to report to the House of Darkness and Light. Part temple, part archive, part supernatural HR department. It's where warriors are examined, evaluated, and, if found worthy, selected for even greater roles in the sacred machinery of war and religion. Which, frankly, sounds like a promotion until you realise it also increases your odds of being ritually murdered. You don't even get time to finish your atoll. You step into the temple's shaded halls and immediately smell three things: copal incense, mildew, and power. Every surface is carved with symbols: jaguars, eagles, hearts, suns, coiling serpents that stare as you pass like they know how your story ends. You walk barefoot across cold stone floors, escorted by two silent attendants wearing robes that billow in ways robes shouldn't. At the end of the hall, you're presented to three priests. Their heads are shaved except for a ridge of hair like a mohawk made of secrets. Their eyes are ringed in black pigment. Their expressions are unreadable, somewhere between divine insight and "I haven't eaten yet today." They study you like you're a chicken they're about to either bless or roast. "3 captives," one of them says flatly. You nod. "Still breathing?" You pause. "Me or the captives?" One of them almost smiles. That's when you know you're in real trouble. You're told you've been selected for Xochitlán, the Flower War. Now don't let the name fool you. There are no bouquets involved. The Flower War is a long-standing ritual conflict between city-states, designed not to conquer, but to supply a steady stream of sacrificial victims. In modern terms, it's like a government-mandated gladiator match with bonus theology. You're flattered. Sort of. Being chosen means you're officially considered strong, skilled, and pious enough to go out and collect human offerings like their mangoes. But you're also terrified, because in the Flower War, everyone is playing by the same rules. And if you get captured, well, the temples have more than enough obsidian blades to go around. You leave the temple in a daze. Your hands are sticky from the ceremonial oil. Your chest is tight from holding your breath for an hour. And your brain is busy trying to process the fact that you've just been marked by the highest authority in the empire, right beneath the emperor and the sun itself. Your reward for success? A ticket to a more poetic form of death. Congratulations. Back in your district, the mood is celebratory. Your name is now whispered with reverence. Your neighbours treat you like a walking omen. Children start following you around, pretending to be your war captives. One of them ties himself to a stick and dramatically falls down every 10 steps until his mum scolds him. Your mother sews a new cloak with embroidered jaguars on the hem. Your father finally speaks to you using complete sentences. And that girl, the one from the market, the one who gave you the marigold, she glances at you now like maybe, just maybe, you're someone worth sharing a cacao drink with under a quiet moon, which is thrilling. And also a logistical nightmare. See, there's no such thing as casual dating when your face is painted on a shrine wall. Courtship in Aztec society is formal, strategic, and steeped in metaphor. You can't just say, "Hey, want to get to Mali sometime?" You have to send intermediaries poetry and symbolic gifts like maize dough shaped into ducks. Seriously. And while elite warriors are permitted to have concubines or even multiple wives, you're not quite at that level. Yet. Also, love doesn't sit well with the priesthood. The gods tend to get jealous when you give your heart to someone else. You tread carefully. Because even one misstep, one whisper of impiety or weakness, and you could find yourself not as a captor, but as the offering. The next few weeks are a blur of preparation. You run drills with senior warriors, you study omens, dream symbols, star alignments. You're taught new chants, half prayer, half flex. You sharpen your macuahuitl, reinforce your shield, and practice disarming your enemies without snapping their necks. The goal, after all, is to capture, not kill. It's less messy for the priest that way. You also receive spiritual cleansing. This involves being rubbed down with smoked herbs, scolded by a woman old enough to remember the last eclipse, and forced to confess any sinful thoughts to a ceremonial fire. You stare at the flames and admit you once dreamed about sleeping in during a temple festival. The fire crackles ominously. The old woman spits on the ground. You're not sure if that's bad or just her joints acting up. Finally the day comes. You're marked with war paint, yellow for the sun, black for the underworld. Your jaguar pelt is strapped tight across your shoulders. Your hair is tied up with a strip of red-dyed agave fibre. You look, smell, and feel like someone halfway between a warrior and a funeral offering. Your unit lines up at the causeway. You grip your club. You feel the weight of your ancestors behind you. And you wonder, not for the first time, if this will be the battle where the story ends. Because in the Aztec world, glory is real. But so is gravity, and both eventually pull you toward the stone. There's a difference between war and Aztec war. Regular war is about land, resources, power. Aztec war, it's about feeding the gods, which makes it significantly more stressful. Because while most soldiers worry about arrows and enemy ambushes, you have to worry about whether your spiritual aura is properly aligned with Venus, whether your war paint was applied on the correct side of your face, and whether your heart will be cut out while the crowd critiques your posture. Welcome to the Flower War. It's not a metaphor, it's just very well-branded murder. You march with a small elite unit, Jaguar initiates, eagle aspirants, and one man who claims to have captured 7 warriors with only his sandal. He says it with a straight face. No one dares ask questions. Your destination is a valley just outside Tlaxcala territory. Neutral ground, sacred ground, agreed upon by both city-states as a proper site for ritualized combat. It's a strange arrangement. Everyone knows someone's going to get their heart carved out like a melon at a festival, but everyone also agrees not to ruin the vibe by taking it personally. This isn't conquest, it's agriculture. Only instead of harvesting corn, you're harvesting people. Before battle, there is ritual. You arrive at the site days early. You help erect ceremonial banners, string flower garlands along the battlefield edge, and watch priests burn offerings to every god who might be tuning in today. You're told not to eat meat, not to touch women, not to bathe. Apparently the gods prefer their warriors pungent. The night before the fight, you sleep under the stars with nothing but your jaguar pelt, and the distant sound of drums keeping time with your heartbeat. You dream of feathers, screaming, the smell of hot blood on obsidian. You wake up already sweating. Battle day arrives, and with it, the surreal theatre of the Flower War. First, both sides face off, rows of gleaming cotton armour and polished shields catching the morning sun. No sneaking, no archers in the trees. Everything here is designed to be seen, by warriors, gods, and everyone watching from the hills with their morning tamales. You and your opponents wear similar uniforms. Even your weapons are designed to injure, not kill. Macuahuitl blades are dulled slightly. Nets are woven tighter. The goal is not death, but capture. Because to be offered alive is an honour, especially if it's someone else. The horn blows. You charge. Not like a stampede, but like dancers trained in precision choreography. Every step matters. Every movement is designed for show. You leap over a fallen banner, sidestep a swing. Your obsidian club meets your enemies with a musical crack that echoes through the valley. Your opponent is fast. He ducks low, sweeps your legs, and nearly sends you sprawling. You counter with a wild swing that misses by the width of a tortilla. He laughs. Laughs. You hate him instantly. You refocus, breathe, strike. He parries again, and for a moment you see the glint of understanding in his eyes. He knows the dance too, and one of you is going to end it on your back. Then, opportunity. He slips. Just a moment. Just enough. You hook his leg, spin him, drive your shield into his ribs. He wheezes. You twist your net around his wrists. He fights it. You tighten. He stumbles. You win. Third captive. You kneel, panting, arm trembling, heart hammering like a death drum. Around you, the battle continues. Clubs whistle, nets fly, bones break, but you've done it again. 3. That's the number they whisper about. 3 captives is the line between trainee and legend. 3 is the number that gets your name inked into temple records, and possibly volunteered for more intimate rituals. The priests find you after the battle, not even subtle. They descend on you like a murder of feathered crows, their robes sweeping the dust like vultures in formation. One of them puts a hand on your shoulder and smiles. A genuine, awful, too many teeth smile. "The gods have taken an interest," he says. You respond with the only appropriate answer. "Thank you." He nods, satisfied, and disappears into the incense. When you return to Tenochtitlan, the city practically glows for you. You are bathed in petals, sprinkled with cacao dust, painted in layers of yellow and red to symbolize the duality of life and death. You're paraded through the market as old women throw tamales and children chant your name in slightly incorrect rhythm. The emperor doesn't call for you, but his advisors do. You're now officially eligible for a promotion to full Jaguar Warrior. That means more honor, more food, more risk of being handpicked for celestial martyrdom. Progress. Your status changes everything. You're moved into the warrior's district, closer to the temple, further from your mother's constant reminders to wash your feet. You sleep on a mat of woven reeds beneath a thatched roof next to others who smell like blood, sweat, and ambition. You're fed more now. Real meat. Turkey. Occasionally dog. Yes, it's culturally normal, and no, it's not weird. Dogs were bred for eating, affection, and occasionally chasing off rival suitors. You're also given more spiritual responsibilities. You must now attend moonlit ceremonies and offer your blood regularly, by poking holes in your earlobes, your tongue, and, on particularly devout days, less convenient places. Every drop feeds the gods, which means your blood is now a kind of divine tax. You also notice people start looking at you differently. Older warriors nod. Merchants give you discounts. A scribe offers to write your name in calligraphy, just in case it's carved into a temple wall later. Even women begin to pay more attention, which frankly is more terrifying than the battlefield, because now you're balancing status, spirituality, and social etiquette in a culture that treats flirtation like a metaphysical chess game. You try to impress one noble girl with your poetry, something about obsidian and eternal love. She stares blankly and says, "You're bleeding on my sandals." You vow to practice, but nothing reminds you of your place in the empire more than the temple summons. You're called again, this time for a purification rite before the Feast of Tenochtitlan. It's one of the holiest days of the year, dedicated to Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, god of fate, sorcery, and, oh, you thought you were in control? How adorable! The ceremony is intense. You kneel for hours. You chant until your voice cracks. You fast for days. And then you watch, alongside thousands, as a young man chosen months ago, dressed as the god himself, is marched through the city, fluted and adored, before being sacrificed at the temple's peak. His heart lifted to the sky, a reminder that no matter how honoured you are, you're never too important to become an offering. That night, you lie awake on your mat. Your jaguar pelt is heavy on your chest. The city sleeps around you. You think about your captives, about the man dressed as a god, about the girl with the good sandals, and about how every victory pulls you closer to the altar. You wonder, not for the first time, whether you're climbing toward glory, or just being led up the stairs. Being a Jaguar warrior was supposed to be simple. You train, you fight, you capture, you sacrifice. The gods smile, you get a better seat at dinner. But now you're navigating something far more treacherous than any battlefield. Nobility, politics, and worst of all, other warriors with ambitions. Turns out, once you hit 3 captives and earn the right to wear your full jaguar skin in public, people stop treating you like a talented rookie and start treating you like competition. Which means you're no longer just dodging clubs and arrows. You're dodging rumours, glares, poisoned compliments, and the occasional ceremonial offering that smells just a little too fermented. It starts with seating. At a warrior's feast celebrating a successful raid on a rebellious province, you arrive early. Not because you're eager, but because you're terrified of accidentally sitting in someone else's spot and getting your spleen insulted in poetry form. There are unspoken rules here, a strict hierarchy, enforced not by rank but by reputation. Veterans of 40 campaigns sit near the centre. Eagle warriors with more feathers than common sense sit next to the dancers. Everyone else gets whatever's left. You find your spot, half-shadowed, close to the servers, and definitely within earshot of the drunk guy telling stories about the time he bit a jaguar on the ear and lived. A nobleman's son sits down beside you. His name is Tenochtitlan. He's younger than you, richer than you, and smells like he bathes in crushed vanilla and rose water. He's not wearing a jaguar pelt. He's wearing a cloak embroidered with images of jaguars, meaning he's never seen real blood but wants everyone to know he owns art. He smiles. You do not. This is where the real fighting starts. Tenochtitlan offers you fermented cacao, sips his from a painted cup with hummingbirds on it, and starts asking questions. Not normal questions. Not, how many captives have you taken? Or, what's your war god of choice? No, he asks things like, so, do you think the priests will pick you for the next Tezcatlipoca impersonation? Translation. Do you think you're important enough to die in a feathered cape? Then, have you ever considered joining the Emperor's personal guard? Translation. You'd be more useful inside the palace under constant surveillance. And finally, I've heard there's talk about your loyalty. You didn't bow during the last sunrise ceremony. You did. Your knees just cracked and no one heard it. You smile, say nothing. The correct answer is always nothing. You leave the feast with a headache and a fresh understanding of Aztec politics. It's less about laws and more about who whispers first. Now that you're rising in the ranks, you're expected to pick a side. Align yourself. Back a noble family. Pledge support for a high priest faction. You're a weapon with prestige now, and no one in this empire leaves weapons lying around. You try to lay low, focus on training, capture more enemies, feed the gods, but people keep trying to feed you. Invitations arrive daily. Dinners, ceremonies, poetry readings. A noblewoman sends you a painted gourd with your face on it. A high priest's assistant offers you a position as divine envoy to the war god's altar, which you're pretty sure just means guy who sweeps up after sacrifices. The pressure mounts, so you do what any proud, terrified warrior does. You run off to a ritual cleansing retreat. You spend 3 days in a mountaintop temple with nothing but water, smoke, and an elderly shaman named Coyotl, who hasn't blinked since you arrived. He makes you fast, sweat, and confess your darkest thoughts to a carved obsidian mirror. You admit you once faked a nosebleed to get out of net-weaving practice. You admit you sometimes miss your mother's cooking more than the thrill of battle. Coyotl nods slowly, spits into the fire, and says, "Good. Now scream your warrior name into the wind until it doesn't sound like a lie." You do. Your throat burns. The wind does not respond. When you return to the city, you feel lighter, cleansed, slightly hungrier than you've ever been. But the peace doesn't last, because now everyone knows you went on retreat, which means they assume you're being groomed for priesthood, or assassination, or both. You come home to find someone has painted your name on a temple wall. Not your full name, just the part people chant, stylized in red. Below it, a small artistic rendering of a flayed man. Interpretation, you're next. To distract yourself, you throw yourself back into training. But training's different now. Less about staying alive, more about staying relevant. You're not the fastest anymore, not the hungriest. Now there's some 15-year-old kid with arms like tree roots and a smile that says, "I've already dreamed of your funeral." He watches you spar, mirrors your moves. You watch him back and start to feel old, which is ridiculous because you're barely 17. But in Tenochtitlan, that's middle age for a warrior. Then the girl returns. Yes, her. The market girl. The one who handed you a marigold and told you to remember you're still human. You haven't seen her in weeks. Now she finds you near the lake. You're skipping stones. She's selling flower necklaces. She walks over, says nothing, and puts one around your neck. "I heard you might die soon," she says. "Thought you should smell nice." You laugh. Genuinely, it hurts in your chest. You ask her name. She gives it. You forget it instantly because your heart is pounding in your ears. You start meeting her secretly. At night, under the old fig tree, near the temple but far enough that the gods can't eavesdrop. You don't kiss. You just talk. About everything. About nothing. About what the stars might be. She says they're old warriors, burning themselves bright so people like you don't have to. You say that's a stupid theory. Then you say it's perfect. Then you ask her if she's afraid of blood, and she says yes. You say good. The next day the Emperor's envoy calls for you. You're to present yourself at the palace. Full dress, clean armour, no bleeding. Which frankly feels impossible. You stand in the palace courtyard beneath a jade-carved colonnade, heart racing, unsure if this is your moment of greatest honour or a polite execution wrapped in ceremonial pageantry. A scribe appears, unrolls a scroll, reads your name, then pauses, looks up, smiles. You've been selected. Your mouth goes dry. For what? He shrugs. The gods will decide. You've been selected. That's what they told you. Just like that. No explanation, no details, no time to finish your maize cakes. And in the Aztec world, selected is never casual. It isn't an award. It's not a promotion. It's a word that makes blood freeze in the temples of warriors who don't fear battle but do fear the attention of the gods. Because when the gods notice you, it's never to say good job, it's to ask for something. And when gods ask for something, they don't mean a fruit basket. The priest who summoned you didn't offer any clarification, just a polite smile and instructions to report to the house of the Quetzal butterfly. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Peaceful, gentle. But when you arrive, the place smells like blood-soaked cloth and crushed incense. The walls are painted with winged creatures, yes. But every one of those creatures has a knife somewhere in the image. One's holding it. One's bleeding from it. One is made of it. You're stripped of your armour, handed a linen loincloth and led into a circular chamber with no roof and no obvious way out. At the centre is a polished slab of obsidian. A mirror, one of the sacred ones. The kind Tenochtitlan uses to peer into human lives. You're told to stare into it. You see your reflection, your eyes, your face, and something else. Not a figure, not a ghost, just a sense. A nudge at the edge of reality. A feeling that you are being looked at harder than you are looking. The priests surround you like shadows that learned how to speak. They say you've been chosen to serve in the coming Tenochtitlan festival. One of the holiest ceremonies of the year, dedicated to the god Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, the god of fate, illusions, and deeply uncomfortable questions about the meaning of life. You've heard of this role before. Warriors selected to serve in these ceremonies are usually either exalted or sacrificed. You don't ask which one you're about to be. They start preparing you immediately. For the next 3 days you're cleansed, starved, tested and transformed. They smear your body with ash and crushed flowers. They make you recite sacred chants until your voice breaks and your gums bleed. One night a priest wakes you up to ask if you think your blood belongs to you or the sun. You say nothing. He smiles and walks away. The physical part is easy. You're used to fasting, used to pain. But it's the silence that gets you. No weapons, no comrades, no drums. Just your thoughts and the echoing cough of some priest who hasn't slept in 40 years. You begin to dream differently. Not about battle or glory, but about masks. Yours. Theirs. You dream of wearing your own face like a disguise. Of being mistaken for something sacred. Or worse. Being mistaken for something worthy. On the 4th day they bathe you. Not in water, but in chili pepper infusion. You emerge raw, red, and reborn. They dress you in ceremonial white, paper flowers, feathered cloak, a headdress that smells faintly of old birds and expectations. You're told you will be part of the ritual representation of Tezcatlipoca. You're not the main sacrifice. No, that role belongs to a young man raised from childhood to impersonate the god, trained to walk beautifully, speak poetically, and die perfectly. You're one of his companions. You'll walk beside him in the final procession, like a bodyguard with no weapons, just presence, just symbolism, just the promise of something holier than survival. When the day arrives, the city changes. The air is different, thicker. The sky feels closer. People cover their mouths in reverence. The causeway is aligned with flowers, banners, and people whispering prayers they barely understand. You walk in the procession behind the chosen one. He is serene, frighteningly calm. He sings as he walks. a song that's part blessing, part eulogy, part lullaby for the sun. You walk behind him, step by step, up the stairs of the great temple. You hear nothing but your own heartbeat. You smell nothing but incense and the salty tang of anticipation. And when the high priest raises the obsidian blade, you do not flinch, because you can't. Not with the entire empire watching. The impersonator raises his arms to the sun. His final note rings out over the city. Then the priest plunges the blade into his chest, cracks his ribs, and lifts the heart as the crowd roars like thunder. You remain still, covered in flower petals. Blood splashes your sandals, and you do not move, because movement would mean you were next. Later, as you descend the steps, the people reach for you, to touch you, to be close to you, to say they saw you stand next to the god when he died. You're no longer just a warrior now. You're an extension of ritual, a symbol, a person-shaped prayer. But when you return to your quarters that night, you are alone. You sit under a fig tree, remove your headdress, and stare at your hands like they belong to someone else. The marigold girl finds you again. She doesn't speak for a while, just sits. Then she says, "You looked like a ghost." You nod. "I thought you'd be taken." "So did I." "Did you want to be?" You don't answer, because you don't know. Because in this empire, glory and death look too much alike to tell the difference anymore. And because sometimes, when you hear the drums at night, you still feel your feet walking up those stairs. Even now. You used to know who you were. A boy with bruised knees. A trainee with something to prove. A son who dreamed of feathered helmets and your name being shouted in the marketplace. You used to measure yourself in bruises, in victories, in how many times you made it home without limping. Now you're not so sure, because lately when people look at you, they don't see you. They see something bigger, a symbol, a vessel, a body that carries meaning for everyone else to chant about, paint on walls and throw petals at during festivals. It's an honour, they say. It's also exhausting. You've returned from the Tenochtitlan ceremony with your heart still beating, but something inside you stayed behind on that temple stairway. You don't know what it is. Pride, maybe. Or the ability to believe you're still in charge of your own story. Back at your warrior barracks, no one talks about what happened. Not directly. They pat your shoulder a little harder, give you the good spot by the hearth. The younger warriors start asking questions like, "What did it feel like up there? And do you think the gods were actually watching?" You answer vaguely. Smile when expected. Tell them it felt like sunlight. You don't tell them it felt like drowning in silence. You don't tell them how you stood in blood and thought about leaving. Not walking, not running. Just leaving. Disappearing into the jungle and never being called chosen again. You keep training, of course, because that's what warriors do. Your body remembers how to move even when your mind doesn't want to. You spar. You run. You recite chants. You poke holes in your earlobes during purification rituals like it's just another Tuesday. But you've started to notice something. You're slower. Not in body, in spirit. You go through the motions like a flute that forgot how to sing. You swing your club without the fury you used to feel. You chant the names of the gods, but the words taste like dust now. You're praised more than ever, invited to more ceremonies, painted more often. Your image appears in 3 new murals across the city, one of them heroic, one artistic, and one wildly inaccurate. You do not have that many muscles. But none of it feels like you anymore. It feels like a character you're being forced to play, and the paint doesn't come off as easily as it used to. Even your dreams have changed. You used to dream about battles, capturing enemies, climbing temples. Now you dream of the lake, always the lake, fog curling over the water, the city distant, your jaguar pelt drifting downstream without you. You dream of sitting at the bottom of the water, watching fish swim past while drums echo faintly from above. You wake up gasping, your hands always shaking, your mat always damp with sweat. The marigold girl notices. She always notices. You meet less frequently now. There are too many eyes, too many rituals, too many reasons to be apart. But when you do see each other, beneath the fig tree, away from the city's roar, She looks at you like she's trying to find the boy who used to laugh when she teased your sandals. Sometimes you talk, sometimes you don't. One night she tells you, "I liked you better when you were scared." You raise an eyebrow. "I mean, you're still scared," she adds. "You just hide it under a lot more feathers now." You want to argue, but you don't. Because she's right. One afternoon during a ceremonial offering to Zyp-Totec, the god who wears flayed human skin like a fashion statement, you're asked to help prepare the sacrificial victims. You're not squeamish. You've seen worse, done worse, but something about today hits differently. You stand beside the priests watching them strip the skin from a man's chest like peeling maize husk, and you feel something in your chest go quiet. Not sad, not horrified, just numb. Like your body registered the horror, but your soul's too tired to file the paperwork. Later that night, you spend an hour scrubbing the dried blood from your forearms, even though it's long gone. The smell still clings to your fingernails. You burn incense until the smoke makes your eyes water. You don't sleep, and yet the empire keeps spinning. Ceremonies continue, the sun rises, and you keep rising too. You're now part of the highest warrior circle. Your name is etched on temple walls, sung in festival songs, and used in examples to frighten lazy recruits into working harder. You're introduced to the emperor during a seasonal tribute gathering. He thanks you with a nod. That's it. No words, just a nod. And you're expected to carry that nod like a badge of honour for the rest of your life. You do. Because what else are you supposed to do? People start bringing you gifts, trinkets, food, even family members. A merchant offers you his daughter's hand in marriage, not out of love, but prestige. You politely decline. You still think about the marigold girl, but you don't know what kind of future exists for a boy who's becoming a ghost in his own story. She deserves someone real, and you're starting to feel more like a mask than a man. Then one day during morning training, your arm locks up mid-swing, just stops. A searing pain shoots from your shoulder to your wrist. You drop your club. Everyone freezes. It's a simple thing. A pulled muscle, maybe a pinched nerve. But in a world that measures your worth by your ability to fight, bleed, and smile through the pain, it might as well be a death sentence. You smile, laugh it off, say it's nothing. The others nod, but they've seen it. So have the priests. You're now officially watched. And not in the flattering way. That evening you receive a summons, not to fight, not to feast, but to attend a private ritual review. To assess your readiness, the scroll says. You know what it means. They're checking if you're still sharp enough to swing, or soft enough to sacrifice. You stare at the parchment for a long time, then you fold it, and sit by the window. The sun is setting, painting the lake gold. The drums are distant, and you wonder, not for the first time, how many warriors disappeared after their 5th captive? How many were honoured to death? You wonder if they saw it coming, or if, like you, they simply woke up one day and realised the paint no longer felt like part of their skin. There's something different about the summons this time. The scroll is shorter, the wax seal unmarked, no fanfare, no messenger boy shouting about ceremony or honour, just a quiet tap at your door before dawn, and a piece of folded parchment slipped beneath the threshold. It doesn't name a date or reason. It just says, "Come. Today." You know what this is. You've seen the pattern before. Warriors who shone too bright, men with 5 or more captives whose names were suddenly followed by silence. Not disgrace, not exile, just silence. Their absence was never questioned. Their sandals left neatly by the fire, their weapons passed on to apprentices, and then, later, a mural would appear. A song would be sung. Their name would be called during festivals as one who served fully, which is a poetic way of saying they stopped being useful before they started being dangerous. And now it's your turn. You wash, you dress, you tie your jaguar pelt tight. You don't say goodbye to anyone. That would draw attention, and attention is the last thing you want right now. The city is still asleep as you walk toward the temple district. The air smells of damp stone and last night's incense. A few early merchants sweep their stalls. A priest passes without looking at you. The streets are quieter than they should be. You climb the steps of the temple slowly, carefully. The stone feels warmer than usual, like it remembers footsteps and is warning you not to add yours to the pile. You reach the top and wait, standing still beneath the painted serpent arches. They make you wait an hour. You don't sit, you know better. When they finally emerge, the priests say nothing at first. They form a semicircle around you, eyes painted, expressions unreadable. The head priest speaks. You have served well. You nod. You have brought the gods many gifts. Another nod. You have made yourself a name. There's no response required this time, just the silence of someone who understands that the conversation isn't a conversation. It's a ceremony in disguise. We are gathered, the priest says, to ask if you're ready for your final offering. Your stomach tightens, but your face remains still. He continues. The temple of Huitzilopochtli requires a living vessel, a warrior of prestige, a heart full of sun. And there it is. No more symbols, no more dreams. They want your heart. You don't speak right away, you want to, but your tongue feels like it's been replaced with stone. The priest watches you with the patience of someone who's done this hundreds of times. You think about what you're supposed to say, that it would be an honour, that your blood belongs to the gods, that your death will ensure the crops grow, the empire thrives, and the sun rises tomorrow. You've said those words before, to others, to boys younger than you, to enemies tied to the stone. You know them by heart, but when it's your turn, they don't come. The priest waits, then raises a brow. You clear your throat and finally manage. I still have one more offering to bring. It's not defiance, it's a delay. He considers this, nods. One more. You exhale, too slow to be a sigh, too shallow to be relief. They give you until the next full moon. 17 days. You don't tell anyone what happened. But you don't need to. The older warriors know. They see it in your eyes. The younger ones notice how you pause during training now, how you're quieter at meals, how you watch the sun set like it might forget to rise tomorrow. You spend your days preparing for your final campaign. That's what they call it now. You must lead a small raid into a hostile border town, one that recently insulted the emperor with an unfortunate sculpture involving a jaguar and a duck. It's not a large mission, not important politically, but it's public, visible. It gives them something to remember you by. You pack your armour, sharpen your obsidian blades, repaint your shield with the jaguar motif, black on red. You spend the last night before departure beneath the fig tree. She's waiting for you, the marigold girl. You haven't seen her since before the summons. She doesn't smile when you arrive, doesn't speak right away. Finally she says, "They're taking you, aren't they?" You nod. "Is this goodbye?" You shrug. "I'll bring one more captive. Then we'll see." She reaches into her pouch and hands you a small object wrapped in cloth. You open it. Inside is a bead, carved from jade, polished until it glows faintly in the moonlight. "Keep this in your pouch," she says. "If the gods take your heart, maybe they'll see this too." You want to kiss her, or cry, or scream, but instead you just tuck the bead into your belt and walk away. The raid is messy. The enemy is disorganized but desperate. Their warriors are lean, fast, unpainted. You clash in a grove of old trees, obsidian clubs sparking against shields, nets flying, fists pounding into ribs. You fight like a man with a deadline. You don't speak, you don't chant, you don't breathe until your opponent is bound at your feet, snarling and cursing in a language you don't know. Your fourth captive. The fifth would be you. You return to the city on the 15th day. The sun is setting. Your jaguar pelt is soaked in sweat. Your hair tangled, your body bruised, but your prisoner is intact, alive, and screaming the whole way. You present him to the priest without ceremony. The temple receives him in silence. The high priest nods. "Your final offering is accepted," he says. Then he pauses, and for the first time smiles. "You may live." Just like that. A sentence, a reprieve, a new chapter, or perhaps just a longer ending. You walk home in silence, unsure how to feel. Relieved? Betrayed? Angry that you weren't good enough to be chosen? or grateful that you get to keep waking up. You pass a mural being painted on the side of a house. It's you, or someone who looks like you, painted mid-battle, glorious, perfect. You don't feel like that man. You feel like the shadow behind him. That night you sleep beneath the fig tree. She doesn't come. But you keep the jade bead in your hand anyway, because some things are still real. Even when you're not sure you are anymore, you thought it would feel different. Living, that is. Being spared by the gods was supposed to be a triumph. A final test passed. The ultimate cosmic thumbs up. But now that the knife didn't come down and your heart stayed exactly where it belongs, beating awkwardly in your chest, you're not sure what you were expecting. Parades numbered a piece. Definitely not. But something. Instead, you walk through the streets like a shadow stitched to your own body. People still nod when they see you, still whisper your name, still offer you offerings, food, cloth, flattery. But it's changed. You can tell. Their reverence has a new flavour now. Confusion. As if they're not sure how to talk to someone who should be dead but isn't. They don't know what to do with you. Neither do you. Your days resume. Sort of. You train. You lead younger warriors. You sit in temple councils and pretend you care about the annual feather budget. You attend rituals and lend your voice to the chants. But it's all paper thin. You go through the motions like a dancer in a play he no longer believes in. Your arms still swing, your legs still march, but inside there's only silence. It's not grief. It's not guilt. It's something more subtle, like a room you used to live in that no longer fits your bones. The priests don't summon you anymore. Well, that's the strangest part. They used to circle you like buzzards in silk. Every sunrise was a fresh reminder that you were useful, powerful, wholly adjacent. Now they barely acknowledge your existence. You're not quite a relic, not quite a threat, just retired, too sacred to demote, too expendable to exalt. You become a living artifact. People start asking you for wisdom, not advice, wisdom. As if surviving makes you insightful. As if staring into the smoking mirror and walking back down the temple steps gives you eternal answers to life's biggest questions. It doesn't. You still don't know what the stars are. You still dream of the lake. One morning you're called to witness a new initiate's naming ceremony. He's young, maybe 13, full of sharp elbows and misplaced confidence. He doesn't even flinch when the priest cuts the lobe of his ear and lets the blood drip onto the fire. He looks up at you as you approach. "You're the one who lived," he says. You nod. "Was it worth it?" You open your mouth, nothing comes out. You begin spending more time alone, wandering outside the city, visiting shrines that no one prays at anymore. Old gods, lost gods, gods with names that crumble when spoken aloud. You sit with them, offer a bit of food, and say nothing. Some days you walk out to the lake and just watch the birds float. You start wearing simpler clothes. You stop carrying your obsidian club. You turn down invitations to feasts. People stop noticing. Which strangely is a relief. You start to remember what it feels like to be invisible again. But of course, peace never lasts. Not here. One night, a runner finds you by the lake. He's breathless, wide-eyed. A message from the capital. Urgent. The Emperor's youngest brother has gone missing. Presumed captured in a scouting mission near the eastern frontier. The court wants you. You're the only one they trust. Or maybe you're the only one expendable enough to blame if things go badly. You sigh. Old bones ache as you rise. You'd hoped this part of your life was over, but apparently even ghosts can be summoned. The journey takes days. You travel with a small team, all younger, all eager, all armed to the teeth. They treat you with awkward reverence, like a living myth they've only heard stories about. None of them dares speak your name. Not until the fourth night, when one of them, a tall boy named Malinal, finally asks what it felt like to stand on the temple stairs and not die. You tell him the truth. Loud. He laughs, unsure if it's a joke. It's not. You find the trail of the Emperor's brother near a burnt-out fishing village. The signs are clear. A scuffle, footprints, blood. The captors were from a rebellious hill clan, not large in number, but bold enough to snatch a noble during the dry season. You track them into the forest. You move silently. The younger warriors follow your lead. You remember what it feels like to hunt again. The focus, the rhythm, the silence between heartbeats. You find them at dawn. Half asleep, not expecting company. You strike first. The fight is fast, efficient. No glory, no theatre, just tired men swinging at each other in the dirt. You recover the noble, alive, barely. He's missing a toe and most of his dignity. You sling him over your shoulder and carry him back like an offering no one asked for. No one thanks you. That's fine. You didn't do it for them. Back in Tenochtitlan, the emperor sends you a token, a gold pendant shaped like the sun. You sell it the next day and give the money to a weaver whose house burned during the last lightning storm. The empire watches you with confusion again. You're not playing your part. You are supposed to fade into legend, or flame out as a martyr. Instead, you keep living. And worse, you keep choosing. You find the marigold girl again. She's older now. So are you. You don't say much. She still sells flowers. You still remember her scent. You walk with her through the market like it's any other day. And for once it is. At night you lie beneath the stars, no drums, no summons, no paint on your face. Just the sound of your own breath and the steady pulse of your body refusing once again to give itself up. You wonder if the gods are still watching, and if they are, whether they're confused too. It's been months since your last summons, months since anyone painted your name on a wall, or wrapped a flower garland around your shoulders, or whispered your victories like prayers. And you've come to realise something no one ever told you during all those years of blood and incense and glory. There's no ritual for the aftermath. No ceremony for when the gods are done with you but forget to take your body. No priest to tell you how to be a man once the warrior inside you has nothing left to chase. No more enemies to bind. No more battles that need a name behind them. You wake up earlier these days, out of habit, not discipline. Your mat feels heavier than it used to, like the air is sitting on your chest while the sun rises without asking your permission. You wash your face in silence, chewing maize slowly, watching the city wake up around you with a rhythm that no longer includes your footsteps. Once the city bent slightly when you walked through it. Not out of fear, not always, but out of familiarity. Now people glance at you like they're trying to remember something about your face. A story they once heard. A mural they passed in a different neighbourhood. You're not forgotten. You're something worse. You're remembered vaguely. You don't train anymore, not officially. The younger warriors still spar in the courtyards, but they don't ask you to join. Out of respect, they say. But you know it's because they don't want to see what it looks like when legend bleeds like everyone else. You walk past them anyway, nodding, catching a few sideways glances. A few of them still wear the pattern you made famous. The spiralling black jaguar stripes you once painted on your shield. Imitation, honour, memory. You feel old. You're not. But in this world, old isn't measured in years. It's measured in how long it's been since someone screamed your name in battle. At night, you visit the edge of the city, beyond the causeways, past the canals and flower gardens. There's a broken temple there, one that hasn't been used in years. It was dedicated to a minor god, something to do with time or storms or dreams. No one really remembers anymore. But the steps are still smooth from foot traffic, and the altar still has grooves worn in it where offerings were once laid. You sit there now, alone, most nights. You bring a small bowl of food, a flower, sometimes just silence. You talk to no one, or maybe you talk to the god who used to live here. You're not sure if he's still listening. You tell him about the dreams. They're getting stronger. You dream of the temple stairs, again and again. But now you're not climbing. You're standing at the top, looking down. The crowd below you is faceless, silent. You raise your arms. You open your mouth. But no sound comes out. Then the stairs collapse, and you fall. Not into death, but into waking. Each time you jolt upright on your mat, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, breathing like you've just come out of battle. But there's no enemy, no chant, no priest holding a blade, just the sound of your own breath, and the ache in your chest that never fully goes away. The marigold girl visits sometimes, not often. She has her own life. She always did. She still sells flowers, still weaves bracelets, still wears her hair tied with thin yellow ribbons that remind you of sunlight through temple smoke. When she does visit, you sit together in silence. She doesn't ask about your past. You don't ask about her future. You just sit, knees brushing, eyes following the stars. One night she asks, "Do you miss it?" You know what she means. The weight, the attention, the purpose. You think about it. About the sting of blood in your mouth, the burn in your arms after a battle, the way the drums match the beat of your heart when you stood before 1,000 people as the gods looked down and nodded. You say, "I miss believing it mattered." She says nothing, and that's the right answer. You begin to realise that being spared doesn't mean you were chosen. It just means the gods weren't hungry enough that day. Or maybe they were saving room for someone with better posture. You carry this truth like a second spine. You don't say it aloud, but you feel it in the way your sandals hit the ground, in the way your body no longer aches from battle but from stillness. The hardest part of survival isn't the wounds, it's the quiet. Eventually word reaches you of another warrior being selected. A young man, captured 4 enemies in 2 years, sharp, eager, beloved by the priests. There's talk that he's walking the same path you once did. You see him in the temple courtyard one day. His armour is clean, his eyes bright. He sees you, hesitates, then he bows, you nod. You don't speak, you don't need to, because you've both seen how this story ends, and how it doesn't. You return to the old temple that night, the one no one prays in anymore. You place a small obsidian shard on the altar, just one. Then you light a fire, not for ritual, just for warmth. You lie back against the worn stone steps, arms behind your head, watching the smoke curl up toward the stars. You wonder if the gods remember you. You wonder if it matters. You fall asleep before you decide, and for once the dream doesn't come. You never thought you'd live long enough to be irrelevant. That wasn't part of the plan. Back when your fists were fast and your name was still sharp enough to make people flinch, you didn't picture this. You imagined a blaze of glory. One last battle. One final roar beneath the sun before your heart was lifted skyward like a feathered gift. Instead, you wake up every morning with stiff knees and quiet neighbours. There are no more drums outside your door. No painted messengers calling your name before sunrise. No flowers waiting on your doorstep unless you buy them yourself. You're not invisible exactly, but you're not what you were. You're a piece of the past walking around like it forgot to sit down. At first it was confusing, then insulting. Now, it's something else. Now it's a kind of peace. You stop wearing your jaguar pelt in public. Not because it's shameful, but because it's unnecessary. You fold it carefully and place it on a shelf near your mat. You still keep it clean. Still run your fingers over the old stitching where the teeth once bit into your shoulder during your first campaign. But you don't put it on. That skin belonged to someone else. You trade your ceremonial sandals for a simpler pair. Softer leather, less blood-stained. You start growing your hair out again, just enough to feel the wind in it. You let your body rest. For the first time in years, you stop counting how many scars you have. You begin to listen, to the birds, to the children playing near the canals, to the sound of baskets being woven, and tortillas being flipped and gossip floating through the streets like incense that forgot where the temple was. These sounds used to be background noise, the hum of a world you defended but never really joined. Now they feel like a song you're slowly learning the words to. You start fixing things. First it's your neighbour's wall, just a crack, but you patch it with clay before the rains return. Then it's the broken steps on the shrine to the maize goddess. Then a shattered flute. Then a chipped cooking pot. You don't ask for payment. You don't explain. You just show up with your hands and whatever you can carry and do the work. At first, people are confused. Some whisper. Some ask if you've been punished by the priests, if this is some kind of penance. But eventually they stop questioning it. Eventually they start asking for help. And then something stranger happens. They start offering help in return. One afternoon, a group of children show up at your door carrying sticks. They ask you to teach them how to fight. Not to kill, they say, just to feel brave. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's something you would have said once, and so you do. You show them how to hold the stick, where to plant their feet, how to swing, how to duck, how to breathe when they're scared. You tell them that courage isn't loud, it's steady, that most warriors don't feel brave until the moment after the battle is over. You don't tell them how many times you were scared and swung anyway. You save that part for later. The Marigold Girl comes by more often now. She brings food, stories, silence. She never tries to fix you, never asks you to explain what's still missing in the space between your ribs. She just stays long enough that the missing part feels a little less sharp. One night she hands you a pouch of seeds. Plant them, she says. You need something to grow. You ask her what kind of seeds they are. She shrugs. Whichever kind you deserve. You plant them the next morning. The soil is dry, your hands are clumsy. You're not a farmer. You don't even know if you're doing it right. But you dig the holes, bury the seeds, water them, and wait. It feels strange. Stranger than war ever did. Because war is fast. It ends. Even when it doesn't feel like it, it does. But this, planting, living, it drags on in ways you never trained for. Still you check the soil every day. Still you wait. There's a festival in the city, one of the big ones. Fire, feathers, flutes, and food as far as the eye can see. You're invited, of course. Not formally, not with a scroll or a priest blessing. Just word of mouth. A friendly voice saying, "You should come." You almost don't go, but then you do. You wear plain clothes, no paint, no weapons, just yourself. The square is packed. Dancers spin, vendors shout. Drums thunder in the chest like old memories. Someone hands you a cup of pulque. A child tugs on your tunic and asks if you're that warrior from the temple stories. You smile. Not anymore. You dance. Badly. But you dance. And for a moment, the world feels light. That night you return home and sit beside your tiny garden. The sprouts are just beginning to peek through the dirt. You don't know what they are yet. Don't know if they'll bloom, if the rains will come in time, if the soil will hold. But you planted them anyway. And that counts for something. You lie down beside them, hands behind your head, eyes tracing the stars. So there's no drumbeat, no flame, no gods demanding your heart. Only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, and the faint echo of your own breath. Still going. Still yours. You used to worry about being forgotten. Back when your name rang out like a war drum and every cut on your body felt like a holy punctuation mark, the idea of fading away was worse than death. You didn't fear being sacrificed. You feared being ignored. You thought memory was the same as meaning. That if people chanted your name long enough, if the murals were bright enough, if the stories were repeated in enough temples, maybe you'd never really disappear. But now you know better. Now you know that memory doesn't belong to you. It belongs to them. To the children who misremember the details. To the neighbours who whisper versions of your story to spice up dinner. To the old man who insists he once trained beside you, even though he's never held a club in his life. And strangely, you've made peace with that. Because it turns out letting go of your own legend is the only way to survive it. You still walk the city, but slower now. Not because you're weak, but because you're not in a rush to impress anyone. You linger at the market stalls. You help the blind potter find her way to the kiln. You mend a basket with frayed edges and show a young boy how to fix it himself next time. He says thank you with wide eyes and then runs off yelling, "The Jaguar Warrior taught me." You smile. You don't correct him. Let the story grow legs. Let it walk without you. The garden is coming along. Slower than you'd like, but that's the thing about life when it's not trying to kill you. It takes its sweet time. The marigold seeds sprouted first, as if mocking your reluctance to believe in them. Then a few leafy stalks pushed their way up, green and stubborn, like they had something to prove. You water them every morning, even when it hasn't rained. You don't talk to them. That would be ridiculous. Except, sometimes you do. Just a word or two. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to remind yourself that things can grow without blood. A festival approaches. This one honours Tlaloc, the rain god, the one who gives life and drowns cities when he's in a bad mood. The priests come out in full regalia, dressed like frogs and carrying bundles of corn and cacao. Children wear little waterbird masks and splash through the canals like they're chasing the storm away with laughter. You stand at the edge of it all watching, not participating but not avoiding either. Then you see it. A new mural, painted on the temple wall, fresh pigment, still a little wet. It's a battle scene, dramatic, swirling, full of motion, and right there in the centre, someone who looks like you, or what you looked like 10 years ago. Fierce, painted, mid-swing, with fire in your eyes and a captured enemy at your feet. The muralist didn't get your nose quite right. You stand there for a long time just looking at it. People walk past. Some pause. One man says to his friend, "That's the old Jaguar. He still lives near the shrine with the broken steps." You don't say anything. You just keep walking. That night you hear drums in your sleep again. Not the panicked, frenzied kind from the battlefield. Not the slow, heart-deep ones from the temple stairs. These are different. Softer. Slower. Like something calling you back but not urgently. Like a memory tapping its fingers in the dark just to see if you're still listening. You wake before dawn and sit by the fire. You think about visiting the capital again. Not for war, just to see the lake. A messenger comes to your door 2 days later. He's young, nervous, too clean to be a soldier. He hands you a scroll with trembling hands. It's an invitation. A ceremony is being held for the new Eagle Warriors, recently promoted. They're honouring the living ancestors of the old warrior orders. You've been requested, not required, just requested. You say yes. You don't know why. Maybe because no one said your name out loud in weeks. Maybe because you're curious. Maybe because part of you wants to know if you still fit into the world they rebuilt around your absence. The capital hasn't changed much. More murals, more people. The air smells of charcoal and roasted squash. You walk through the city like a ghost who forgot to vanish. Some people recognise you, others don't. A few nod. One boy calls you uncle by mistake. You arrive at the ceremony in your plainest tunic. The other elders wear armour. You don't. You're greeted with polite respect. Nothing more. No fanfare. No trumpets. Just a seat near the centre, close enough to hear the names being read aloud. They honour the new warriors first, give them feathered cloaks and sacred titles and cups of thick chocolate to toast their future glory. Then come the speeches, one by a priest, one by the emperor's cousin, one by a scribe who looks like he hasn't slept in a week. Then they begin calling the old names, the living legends, they say. You're the last one read, and when your name is spoken, the crowd claps. Not loudly, not with frenzy, just respectfully, like a page turning at the end of a chapter. You nod. You don't rise, you don't speak, you don't need to. That night you leave the city before the feasting begins. You walk alone, sandals soft against the packed dirt road, moonlight silvering your shoulders like war paint made of sleep. When you reach your home, the marigolds are blooming. You kneel beside them and trace a fingertip across one of the petals. The air smells like smoke and damp stone and something faintly sweet, like memory just before it fades. You sit down beside the garden and watch the stars blink back into existence one by one. You don't feel old. You don't feel forgotten. You just feel real. Finally. And you wonder if maybe that's all legacy is. Not the stories, not the murals, not even the name. Just the fact that you kept living long enough to matter to someone, even if they never knew what you used to be. It starts with a boy, not one of the children who asks you to teach them how to swing a stick or balance their stance, not one of the little ones who chase beetles and throw pebbles and know you only as the man who fixes broken pots and hands out sour fruit when the sun's too high. Number this one is older, maybe 16. He's tall, bony, and serious in the way only someone new to the world can be. He finds you one morning near the canal, where you're pulling weeds from the edge of your garden. He stands there a moment too long before speaking. "Is it true," he asks, "that you once took 5 captives in one campaign?" You glance at him. His eyes are wide, hungry. You don't answer right away, because the truth is slippery now. The edges blur. Maybe it was 4, maybe 5, maybe they fought, maybe they surrendered, maybe one of them had a name you still whisper in dreams. You straighten your back, wipe the dirt from your hands and say, "I remember taking one. That was enough." He frowns. That's not the story he came for. But then he says it, almost accusingly. "But the murals?" "Ah, of course, the murals. They've been popping up more lately. New ones, fresh paint, bolder colours. You're not always the centrepiece, sometimes just a figure in the background, but you're in them. Always larger than you really were. Your jaguar pelt impossibly dramatic. Your obsidian club catching the light like divine judgment. The enemies around you are more monstrous than human. The scenes are all action, no breath. All glory, no silence. You pass one on the way to market and notice they've added a serpent to your shoulder. A god symbol. You've never worn a serpent in your life. Another mural shows you roaring mid-battle with flames behind you. You've never roared. You were more of a quiet stab and drag sort of guy. But the boy doesn't want that story. He wants the legend. You think about correcting him. About explaining that myths aren't born from truth. They're born from need. That people need their heroes to be big and loud and flawless. Because if they're too human, the gods start looking suspiciously like neighbours. But you don't say any of that. You just say, the murals tell a good story, but they leave a lot out. He looks at you, confused, then frustrated, then eventually he leaves. He doesn't thank you. He doesn't need to. You weren't the version of yourself he was looking for. Later that week, you overhear a vendor telling your story. You're not sure who he's talking to, a group of women, maybe a traveller, but his voice is loud, animated, full of swagger. The Jaguar Warrior? Oh yes, took 7 enemies in a single raid, fought off 20 more with a broken spear, ate raw cactus and bathed in obsidian. He was half man, half god. They say his blood burned like fire and his breath could melt copper. You blink. You've never even touched copper. At first it irritates you, not because the stories are wrong, but because they're so confidently wrong. They replace your uncertainty with clarity, your fear with thunder, your choices with inevitability. They sand down all the parts that made you real. But slowly, quietly, you begin to understand something. The story isn't for you anymore. It never was. One night you find yourself walking toward the old shrine, the one with the broken steps, the one no one prays at anymore except you. The air smells like wet earth and charcoal. You carry no offerings, no flowers, just a bench you carve from fallen wood, dragged up the hill one stubborn day and wedged against the wall. You sit, you listen, you remember. You think about the first time you saw someone die. Not in war, not in ritual, just die. An old man, slipped on stone during the rains. You were maybe 9. He hit the steps hard, didn't move after. The street was quiet for a moment. Then someone laughed. Then someone cried. And then the day just went on, like it hadn't swallowed a person whole right in front of you. You think about that now. Because the stories always skip over that part. The fact that after death, the world keeps turning. The marigold girl, who is not a girl anymore, sits beside you the next evening. She's weaving something. You don't ask what. Her fingers move with that gentle speed of someone who has nothing left to prove. She glances sideways and says, "They painted a new one." You don't have to ask what she means. "They gave you wings," she says. You nod. Of course they did. She continues weaving, then adds, "You should be flattered." You smile. "I'd rather be accurate." She laughs softly. No one prays to accuracy. She's right. The next day a young priest visits. He's polite, nervous, dressed in crisp linens and smelling of incense. He explains that they're preparing a ceremony to honour the warrior orders of old. Jaguar, eagle, arrow. They want to read aloud the great names of the empire. He asks for your blessing to include yours. You don't answer right away. Not because you don't want it, but because you're wondering which name they'll use. The real one? Or the one carved into painted stone? You say, "You can use my name." Then you add, "But speak it softly." It was never meant to be shouted. The priest looks puzzled. But he bows, and that's enough. The garden is blooming again. The marigolds stretch taller than your knee now. The leaves wide, veined, patient. A new stalk has sprouted. Thick, green, unfamiliar. You don't know what it will become. You don't ask. You're learning to wait. One morning you find a small clay figurine placed at the edge of the garden. It's crude, lopsided, barely recognisable, but it's wearing a jaguar pelt and holding a club. A child must have made it. You don't move it. You just sit beside it, watching the petals sway in the breeze, and for a moment you feel lighter than you have in years. Not because someone remembered you, but because someone cared to imagine you, even if they got the details wrong. You don't remember when it happened. The exact day the pain in your shoulder became a constant instead of an event. The exact moment your pace turned from measured to slow. The first time someone offered to carry something for you, not because they were being polite, but because they thought you needed help. You're not old, not in the way elders are supposed to be. You still have your teeth. Your eyes still track the stars. Your legs still carry you where you need to go. But there's something in your joints now that wasn't there before. A quiet negotiation with each step. A stiffness that settles in like an uninvited guest. You don't mind it. In fact, you almost welcome it. It's the first time your body's ever felt honest. People don't call you Jaguar anymore. Not directly. Not to your face. They call you the old one, or the one who helps fix things, or the man with the marigolds. You've become a part of the landscape. Like the chipped stones on the causeway, or the singing vendor with the missing tooth. Familiar, comfortable, but no longer central. It doesn't hurt like you thought it would. In a strange way, it's a relief. Being a symbol is exhausting. Being a person is simpler. The marigold woman, no longer even girl in your mind, visits more often now. Sometimes just to sit. Sometimes to bring food you didn't ask for. She never says much. You rarely speak either. But there's a rhythm to the silence now. A shared understanding that needs no explanation. She asks once, while peeling fruit, "Do you think the gods remember everyone?" You don't answer right away. You think of the shrines you once fought for, the priests who chanted your name while you bled on the altar, the crowds that raised their hands to the sky as you were spared. You think of the jaguar mask you wore, now packed away in a woven basket under your mat, growing dusty beside the obsidian club you haven't lifted in years. You say, "I think the gods forget us when we stop giving them reasons to look." She nods. That doesn't sound like a bad thing. And somehow it isn't. You still tend the garden. It's mostly marigolds now. Some corn. A stubborn little cacao plant that doesn't seem to care whether it thrives or dies. It just keeps showing up. You water them each morning. You hum a tune that doesn't belong to any song you remember learning. Some days the children help. They ask fewer questions now. The stories are already being told elsewhere. Louder, brighter, and wronger. You're no longer the source. You're just the man who teaches them how to hold a trowel, how to spot rot on a leaf, how to tell if the rain's coming by the smell in the wind. It feels good. Better than you expected. One evening you're sitting on the bench beside your garden when a procession passes. It's some festival, one of the smaller ones. You don't remember which god it honours. There are so many. They come and go like rain clouds now. But the children in the parade are laughing. Their faces painted, their hands holding clay figurines and paper banners. One boy, no older than 7, breaks away from the group. He runs to your fence, peers over it and asks, "Are you the jaguar ghost?" You blink, then laugh. "I'm not a ghost," you say. He squints. "But my uncle says you used to eat warriors and spit out their bones." "That sounds messy," you reply. He thinks about that, then says, "You don't look scary." You smile. Good. He runs off, satisfied. You watch him disappear into the noise and the colour and the music. You stay behind, quiet, whole. You go to the temple less now. The steps feel steeper each time and the voices inside less familiar. The priests are younger, hungrier. They carry themselves like you used to. Too loud, too certain. They nod when they see you, but they don't ask you to speak. You don't offer. You sit at the back when you go. Never long, just enough to remember what stone feels like under your fingers, just enough to remind yourself that once Your knees were stronger than fear. You light a candle once, just one, not for a god, for yourself. Then you leave. The nights are colder now. The rains are late. You bundle in wool and sit by the fire, sipping bitter chocolate from a cracked cup you repaired yourself. The stars overhead look the same as they did when you were 16, and convinced you'd die before 20. They're sharper now, less romantic, more like pinholes in a world that's fraying at the edges. You don't mind. You never liked soft things much anyway. One morning you wake up and something's different. Not broken, just missing. A weight in your chest you didn't notice until it was gone. You step outside. The marigolds are taller than you now. They lean in every direction, golden and absurd, reaching for nothing in particular. You smile. You reach up and pluck one. Not for an offering, not for a ceremony, just because you wanted to. You don't need a reason anymore. There comes a point when your name sounds strange, even to you. It's not just the way people pronounce it now. Longer, more dramatic, like it was born for chance instead of whispered introductions. It's not even the titles they've started to attach to it. Jaguar of the Firewind, the Night Skinner, the one who danced with death. No, it's deeper than that. It's the realization that they're not saying your name anymore. They're saying someone else's. Someone larger, shinier, bolder. A version of you inflated to fit the shape of a myth. And yet, the children eat it up. You hear them repeating it in alleys and under woven rooftops and beside flickering fires. Did you know he once drank obsidian sap and spat lightning? My cousin says he used to sleep on jaguar skins wrapped in cloud feathers. They say if you whisper his name into the wind at midnight, he'll appear in the smoke and bite your fear in half. You lean against your wall, arms crossed, half amused, half detached. You've never bitten anyone's fear in half, but it's a nice image. You don't correct them. Not anymore. You used to back when the stories were still close enough to be wrong, but now they're so far from the truth they've become something else entirely. Harmless, sweet, a kind of inherited fiction. You've become a bedtime story, a warning, a comfort, a distraction from the dark, and somehow that feels better than being a symbol of power ever did. One of the neighbourhood mothers asks you to speak to her son. He's been playing warrior in the street, smashing clay pots with a stick, shouting war cries that don't belong to any tradition you recognise. She's worried, says he's too wild, thinks he'll get himself hurt chasing ghosts. So you sit with him under the awning of her house. He's all knees and elbows and unearned confidence. He asks, "Did you really stab a man in the heart and eat it raw?" You sigh, then say, "Hearts aren't chewy, you know, too soft." His eyes go wide. "You did eat one." You laugh gently. "Number. But I knew men who did, and they didn't smile after." He frowns. You lean closer. Bravery isn't about who you stab. It's about who you don't. It's about what you protect, what you grow, what you carry. He thinks about that, then asks, "Do you miss it? Fighting?" You stare at him for a moment, then at your own hands. They don't tremble, but they remember. You say, "Some days I miss the sound, not the killing, just the way the world held its breath." He nods, though you're not sure he understands. Still, he hugs you before he runs off. That's new. You notice more and more that fewer people remember the real you. The market vendors now say your name like it's a riddle. The younger priests mention you only in passing, lumped into lists of names they barely pronounce correctly. One even says your story may be exaggerated, which makes you chuckle into your cup of bitter chocolate. You want to tell him it was always exaggerated, but you let it go, because some things are supposed to fade, not vanish, just soften, like fruit left in the sun. Your garden is a jungle now, marigolds everywhere, vines curling like lazy snakes around the old stone basin. Some mornings you find birds nesting in the thicker stalks. You let them. They make more music than the drums ever did. A neighbour girl helps you water the plants. She brings scraps for the birds. One day, she hands you a clay figurine she made. It's you again, at least her version of you. Big arms, jaguar spots, a crown of fire. You thank her. You place it beside the others. There's a small shrine forming on the edge of your porch, not one you built, one the children started. Figurines, stones, bits of string, a feather, a broken slingshot, a burnt seed, offerings of some kind. You don't touch them, you let them grow. One night the marigold woman sits beside you, knees creaking slightly as she lowers herself to the bench. She's holding a bowl of stew and humming under her breath. She passes the bowl to you. "They ask me if you're still alive," she says. You raise an eyebrow. She smiles. "I told them I think so. You still eat like someone who's not done yet." You laugh. "That's generous." She adds, "They also said you're a ghost, that you walk through walls and only appear during eclipses." You slurp your stew. "Well, I do prefer moonlight to sunlight." She nods seriously. "Ghost confirmed." You both sit in silence, listening to the night shift in its hammock. The temple messengers don't come anymore. That stopped years ago. But you still get invitations now and then, usually from schools or small neighbourhood gatherings. They want you to speak, or to sit silently while they honour your legacy. They offer you flowers and food, and sometimes a poorly painted picture of yourself. You never say no. You go. You sit quietly. You nod when they ask if you're proud. You smile when the children gather around you like you might open your mouth and pour out thunder. But mostly you just be. That's enough now. There's something sacred in being ordinary, in waking up and not needing to matter, in eating fruit without ceremony, in planting seeds without ritual, in fixing a roof for someone who doesn't even know your name. You used to think you needed to die gloriously to be remembered. Now you think maybe it's better if they remember you wrong, but with kindness. Let them believe you walked on clouds. Let them say your enemies burst into flames. Let them think your heart beat like a drum made of starlight. Because the truth is simple. The real you. You were scared. You bled. You made mistakes. You fell in love. You tried. And somehow that was enough. It happened slowly, not like a sunset, fast and obvious and soaked in drama, but like the fading of a stone path swallowed by grass. You don't even notice at first. You still walk the same route to the market, still nod to the same faces, still sit at the edge of the garden with a warm drink in hand. But then someone forgets your name. Then someone else calls you the wrong one. And then the new boy on the corner tells his friends that the real Jaguar Warrior died years ago. You're sitting right there when he says it. He doesn't know you're listening. You don't correct him. Because that boy is right. That Jaguar Warrior did die. Just not in the way he thinks. You stop checking the murals. They're not for you anymore. They're not even close. The latest one shows you riding a jaguar the size of a canoe, leaping across a lake of fire while holding a spear that glows like a lightning bolt. You never owned a spear. You never rode anything larger than a stubborn mule. But the children point and cheer. One of them calls you Jaguar Papa. You turn and walk away before they see your face. You're not sad, just curious. You wonder how far the story will drift before it breaks apart completely. There's something beautiful about it, in a backwards way. You used to grip your identity so tightly your fingers cramped. You were the warrior, the blade, the storm. It was the only shape you knew how to fill. And for a while, that shape protected you, gave you meaning, direction, purpose. But now, you realize that shapes change. That sometimes, the best way to stay whole is to let yourself be unrecognizable. One afternoon you catch your reflection in the water basin beside your garden. The face staring back isn't fierce, it isn't noble, it's lined, soft around the eyes, hair silvering, shoulders smaller than memory says they should be. You nod at him. He nods back. You don't miss the other face. That face was heavy, this one floats. The marigold woman has taken to telling her own version of your story. You hear her one day, half hidden behind a reed screen as she chats with a few neighbourhood girls. She doesn't embellish much, doesn't inflate, but she does choose the warmer parts, the funny ones. She skips the blood, highlights the cleverness, mentions the time you saved a bird with a broken wing and refused to admit you were crying when it flew again. You smile. You'd almost forgotten that day, and suddenly it's more important than all the battles combined. One evening she brings you a gift, Not food, not flowers. A scroll. On it, her handwriting. Neat, careful, full of patience. It's the first time someone has written your story. Not the myth, not the mural version, but the one with wrong turns, cold mornings and cracked ribs that ached for months. The one where you lived because someone else died instead. The one where you held a lover's hand while pretending not to be afraid of how much you needed it. You don't speak as you read. You just sit in the dark, firelight flickering over the words. She says nothing either. She knows you're crying. She doesn't call you out for it. She just sets her hand on your knee and leaves it there. The garden is wild now. You've stopped taming it, stopped trimming. The birds make nests in the vines. Bees hum through the blossoms. Children sneak in to sit quietly among the stalks, like it's some kind of sacred space. You let them. You don't even ask them to be careful. Nothing here is fragile. Everything is earned. You dream more now, but not of war, not of teeth or drums or temples. You dream of rain, of laughter, of small things. A bowl of stew on a cold night, the smell of roasted maize, the weight of a familiar head resting on your shoulder. You wake up once to find a marigold placed on your chest. No note, just the flower. You leave it there all morning. Someone starts carving your name into a stone beside the temple. You see it in passing, half done, the chisel mark still fresh. It's not quite spelled right. They'll fix it probably. Or they won't. Either way, it doesn't belong to you anymore. Let them finish the carving. Let them decorate the legend. Let them place offerings beside a story they barely understand. You've already lived it. That's enough. You wake before the sun now, not because of aches, though those have become dependable companions, but because the mornings are gentler than the days. The village doesn't ask anything of you before dawn. There are no questions, no footsteps, no performances to stumble through. Just the sky stretching its back and the birds clearing their throats. You sit by the edge of your garden with your woven blanket and your cup of warm maize drink, and for the first time in your life you feel no pressure to be anything other than present. There's nothing left to become. You already did all of that. Now you just are. You've stopped counting the years. They don't measure you anymore. Not in strength, not in worth. When someone asks your age, you shrug. Not to be mysterious, just because it stopped mattering. The sun doesn't care how many seasons you've seen. Neither do the marigolds, they just keep blooming. One of the children once asked you what it's like to be old. You told her it's like carrying a basket full of quiet. She said that sounded heavy. You said, only if you keep opening it. The marigold woman visits every day now. She doesn't knock. She doesn't ask. She just appears with food or stories or the occasional sarcastic complaint about the new priest's singing voice. Sometimes you talk, sometimes not. But her presence is steady, like rain in the growing months. Sometimes loud, sometimes soft, always needed. She tells you that people have started calling your garden a holy place. You laugh. There's more bird droppings than divinity out there. She shrugs. Sometimes the gods prefer messy altars. You believe that. They liked yours well enough once upon a time. Your hands don't work the way they used to. The fingers are stiff. The grip's slower. But you still mend baskets. You still peel fruit. You still pull weeds, even if it takes longer, and your knees mutter complaints the entire time. It's not about being useful anymore. It's about rhythm, repetition, the peace of doing something that doesn't need applause. No one chants for you now, and that's the best part. One afternoon, a new warrior visits your home. He's young, full of muscles and myths, wears his jaguar pelt like a second skin, fresh and oily from a recent kill. He bows to you, calls you master, says he wants to hear about the final battle. You pause, then ask which one. He frowns. The last one, he says, the one that made the gods choose you. You stare at him for a long time, and then say there was no last one. There was just the one after the one before. He doesn't understand. You don't explain. He leaves disappointed. You let him. He'll learn, or he won't. That's not your story anymore. The dreams have changed. They used to be wild, pulsing with blood and fire and the echo of drums. Now they come slower, softer. Sometimes it's just the memory of someone smiling, or a meal you forgot you loved, or the way your hand used to fit perfectly around a club's hilt before the weight became a burden. Sometimes you don't dream at all. You wake up rested anyway. That's new. That's nice. You find yourself watching the children more. Not to teach, not to correct, just to remember. Their laughter sounds like a language the gods might understand better than prayers. They trip over roots and splash in puddles and scream at nothing just to hear themselves exist. You envy them, just a little. Not because they're young, but because they haven't had to be important yet. You hope they don't need to be, not the way you did. One morning, you can't get out of bed. Your legs argue, your back protests. Your breath feels heavy, like it's dragging a memory behind it. The marigold woman finds you there, eyes open, watching the dust float through the sunlight. She doesn't panic. She just sits beside you. You say, "I think the story's ending." She takes your hand. "It's not an ending," she says. "It's a return." You chuckle. To what? She kisses your hand. To stillness. You don't speak again that day. You don't need to. That night, the sky is clear. Stars like tiny eyes blinking slow approval. The garden rustles with wind and small animals. Someone lights a candle near the shrine of children's offerings, not you. You're inside, wrapped in woven warmth, body slow, eyes half closed. Your heart beats like it has nowhere left to go but here. You're not afraid. You're not ready either. But readiness was never part of the job. You close your eyes, you listen to the wind. It doesn't say your name, it just sighs, and that's enough. The mornings come slower now, not because the sun is lazy, but because you no longer race it. You lie still longer, you listen more. There's a rhythm to the sounds around you. The birds, the creak of wood, the faint rustle of marigolds brushing one another like old friends. The air tastes like dust and fruit and a hint of the rain that never quite arrives. You don't feel fear, just a fullness, like a bowl filled to the brim, not overflowing, just enough. They visit you more often now, not the priests or warriors or even the children who used to paint your face in the dirt. It's the others, the quiet ones, the girl with the limp and the woven dolls, the boy who hides feathers in his sleeves, the man who never speaks but always brings food wrapped in leaves. They don't come to hear stories anymore. They come to sit. They bring silence, not questions. And somehow it's the greatest gift. The marigold woman doesn't speak much either. She kneels in the garden most days, pulling weeds or just dragging her fingers through the soil. You watch her from your mat, blanket draped over your legs, bowl of warm maize drink in your hands. You think about telling her everything, all the things you left out over the years. But then again, she already knows. Or maybe she doesn't need to. Maybe love isn't in the details. Maybe it's in the fact that she keeps showing up. Your dreams are like feathers now. They drift in, soft and strange. Sometimes you're young again, running barefoot across the dry earth, lungs full of air that has never known war. Sometimes you're nothing, just a shadow under a tree, watching others live. Sometimes you're the jaguar itself, slinking through tall grass, unseen and uninterested in being remembered. And sometimes you dream of nothing, just darkness, not empty, just still. One night you wake up and the world feels smaller, not in a frightening way, just quieter, more focused. You can hear the garden breathing. You can hear the sound of your own blood moving like a lazy river. You can feel the earth beneath you, not as a weight, but as a cradle. You close your eyes and whisper, "It's time." You don't know who you're talking to. Maybe no one, maybe yourself. The marigold woman finds you in the morning. You're lying there, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, hands folded like you just finished a thought. There's no panic, no scream, just a pause. She kneels beside you, places her hand on your chest and smiles. "You were never the story," she whispers. "You were the soil the story grew in." And with that she begins to hum. Not a funeral song, a garden song, something only seeds understand. They bury you near the garden, not beneath a temple, not beside a statue, just beneath the soil where the marigolds grow thickest. They don't carve your name in stone. They don't burn incense or paint murals. Instead, they plant more seeds. They leave small things: feathers, clay dolls, cracked cups. A child places a jaguar tooth, likely fake, on the mound. Another sings a song with no words. No one tries to be profound. That's how you know it's real. Over time, your story fades. Not into silence, but into other people. Into the girl who grows the tallest flowers. Into the boy who learns to carry a blade but chooses not to use it. Into the woman who whispers truths without needing credit. You do not live on in glory. You live on in choices, and that is the quietest kind of immortality. Now, as the night wraps around us like woven cloth, and your breath has stilled and your bones rest beneath blooming petals, your story too grows quiet. You were the blade, you were the mask, you were the storm, but more than anything you were a man, and that was always enough. So if you're still here, still awake somehow, thank you for listening to his story, or your story, or maybe just a story about blood and pride and finally letting go. If you're still breathing softly in the dark with your eyes half closed, maybe take a second to like this video or even subscribe, but only if you actually enjoyed the journey. No pressure. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment with your time zone or just tell me what the stars look like tonight where you are. I read all of them. And now, drift. Let the marigolds sway. Let the wind forget your name. And as your thoughts fade into the dark, remember this. You were never meant to last forever. You were only meant to live once, and you did.